Welcome, everyone. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time if you didn't just watch the recording that is immediately before this one. If you've been given the recordings, or if you were here 23 hours ago, welcome back. We are joined again by Lou, and thank you so much for joining us. Really brief introduction. Lou is a product and brand manager at Square Enix. Although I have found myself, even immediately after yesterday, calling it Square, and it made me feel very cool. So thank you, Lou. So she's from Square, a mentor, a brand lead, and again, working on an unannounced AAA project, which I'm very excited about, and I'm hoping to accidentally hear something about it today. Please welcome and give a hand to Lou. Thanks, Lou.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming back as well. Right, so today the idea is to be talking about pitching tips. So this is both my experience having looked at quite a few pitches in the past, and also sort of getting feedback from the Square Enix collective team as well, the production team, because one of the main jobs is doing a lot of that, and also game scouting, which, by the way, is a real job. If anyone would want to go to that kind of direction, biz dev and game scouts, there are jobs out there for this. So it's I guess best practices and pitfalls that we've seen patterns of. And also I think the first picture is the deer in the headlight sensation of getting to start on a new PowerPoint and you have no idea how to make your deck interesting, or what are people actually going to want to see and why they want to see it. So the first couple of slides are production and marketing's mindset about what we are looking for and why we're looking for those things, and also just a bit more insight on some things you might not have known or thought of that are like hidden costs that you didn't know about, that kind of thing. And then there's a very dense slide about all of the things about presentation that I would recommend doing or not doing. The idea is that this deck will be shared with you afterwards as a resource. So you have this in your back pocket when and if you ever need to make a deck, and then future students will also have this available to them. All right, so we'll just get started. So the production questions are all about, is your game feasible? And I know that sounds like a really daft question, but a lot of people come in with an idea, and that doesn't mean that it is actually something that can be produced, and that can be produced at a reasonable cost as well, depending on what kind of publisher you're going to go and meet. So that's really the first question. Is it realistically achievable? So there's, like technical things, but also if you're a one-man band who's saying, I'm going to be making the next MOBA, it's going to be online, it's going to have a server and blah, blah, blah. And, it's like managing your expectations and also the scope of what you're going to be doing. And any like technical things, some people might have really cool ideas. That doesn't mean that the technology is currently available to make them. So that's really the first question. Basic information that you should always have in your deck at the beginning. Platforms, the ones that you are planning on doing for sure. You can also say, I am hoping with support to be doing, I don't know, like Switch 2, that kind of thing. Nobody's got a dev kit, don't worry, it's not just you who's hoping for it. And then the timings for each. So if you're solo dev or a small team, you won't be doing everything concurrently. That means that in your production timeline, you should be showing, we want to focus on, are we PC first, are we console first, and then how long we think it's going to take to do the rest. Or you're a single small team and you don't have the scope or capabilities to do porting to other platforms, in which case you should flag that you would like to be on other platforms, but you will need co-dev support, which is extra money that needs to be thought of. Budget estimations, I guess, is everything that you have tried to think about, including buffer, about, how much do we need to pay ourselves to survive? Do we need an extra artist? Do we need a community manager? Those kind of things. So try to have a comprehensive view of everything that you've thought about, and then hopefully the publisher will be supporting that and giving you more insight about what you might be missing, or do you have enough buffer, those kind of things. So that includes the staffing. And then really important for me, especially on the branding side, your art resources. Do you have someone who's there full time? Do you have a freelancer that's only available for 3 months? Have you got one person that does the UI who's then going to disappear and you'll never see them again? In which case, please get your assets so that I can do something with them. So it's just like showing that you're thinking about everything on your product, not just purely like coding and development. It has to be, every part of it is important for us to make a decision. So the other thing that I guess should be obvious, but what are you doing that's either new, unique, or best in class in your category, so that we understand that we can sell this, right? And we want to sell this, and it has to be snappy, short, and catch people's attention quite quickly. It shouldn't be a page long of loads of words that is complicated. If you can't sell your stuff quickly and efficiently, then the likelihood is it isn't going to translate in a deck, especially if you're not the one presenting it, if you're just sending it cold. Next up for the timeline. So I think it's a real pitfall that I've noticed with especially less experienced devs is you have very optimistic timelines and not enough buffer most of the time. And also it's not because right now you're X amount of people and you're very motivated that somebody gets hit by a bus, somebody has a bereavement, somebody gets another opportunity, and they can't say no, right? So it isn't just the time, but also maybe not all of your people will be here all the time or not full time. You might need to recruit more people. Have you thought about all of those contingencies all the way through? Are you going to need more staff when you're in full production than when you're in pre-production? So again, you can get support from maybe publishing advice, those kind of things, but it's a bigger task than just we think we'll do it by then, or at least you have given it more thought. So the cost and ask, do they make sense? I think this is like the team will be asking themselves that question when they're looking at your deck. So are you making sure that you're not either asking for too much money or not enough money? I've spoken to people who said, we have a full-time job and we have a moonlighting policy, so we don't need to pay ourselves and we'll just work in the evenings and the weekends. And I was like, please don't do that. You will kill yourself. You will be what if your job is too much, so you need to quit, but you haven't asked or budgeted for money for yourself, and suddenly everything's very tight. I've seen a situation where the devs were like selling their car to keep on feeding themselves because they hadn't budgeted properly, and we were paying them anyway, but the milestone didn't work, etc. So it was like you can put yourself in really delicate situations, and I don't want to see young devs either crunching or also just like living in a precarious situation because they haven't done that legwork. So it's you need to be able to live comfortably, not in luxury, but at least to be able to eat every day, right? How many words are in your game? So this isn't something that comes up very often, but bigger publishing, or at least most publishers now, should be looking to localize your game, and that's actually a massive cost. It's dreadfully expensive to localize stuff. So if you can give them at least an estimate, it doesn't have to be absolutely final right now, locked in, but if you're doing a text heavy game, you should be able to tell them, I'm thinking it's 100k blah blah blah. Or if you have a puzzler that has almost no prompts, then it's 2,000 words, and from there that will really help the team say, hey, this will be cheap to localize, we can reach more people, or this is a narrative game, we need to think really carefully about which languages we're going to select. I used to work on a lot of visual novels, and the reasons why they're only localized in English is that because we're looking at one language is $500,000. So if you're really like a smaller country where we don't sell a lot already, it's really hard to justify localizing in Italian if we think we're going to sell like 2,000 copies. We're not going to make $500,000 back in sales. So just to give you some context, this is actually something that people, we want to localize and make it available to more people in more markets. Your word count matters. Developer pedigree or experience or recognition. So if you've ever entered any sort of awards or contest, or you have someone who's been recognized for whatever the thing is, please put that forward, because it helps show that you're more trustworthy because you've already done some stuff. So obviously if you're starting, that's a bit tricky. But also that means please put yourself forward as much as possible in any type of award, anything, literally any discipline as well, right? It doesn't have to be just game dev. If you have an artist that's been recognized, or someone who does music or voice acting, right? So anything that we can use to promote you and sell you to our partners is also really interesting. And in the production side of things, it helps increase the trust that you know what you're doing, because you're an unknown entity and we do need to get to know each other in this process, and that you'll be able to deliver the thing all the way through, because we're taking a risk and investing in something that's not finished. So we obviously want to see that it will happen and it's not just going to collapse and everybody runs away. Legal red flags. So some of it, I will give you a quick example. I once received a pitch and a demo of someone who had like a bunch of bullet hell mini games, and I turned around and asked everyone to look at it in the office, and they go, that is literally the mini games that are in Nier Automata. And the guy had just like presented it as his own things, and then when I called him out on it, he was like, I don't know what you mean, I just made my own thing. It's like, that is a terrible thing to be doing. So anything that could be copyright infringement that's particularly close to the design of, let's say, a Japanese game where you might be catching monsters and there's a nurse that also has pink hair and a white apron, right? I'm speaking from direct experience again. You got to be really mindful of those things. You can have inspiration. You can't directly be stealing other people's intellectual property. And I've put AI in there because we're starting to see people who obviously use it either for prompts, or there's some really, I've seen really intelligent ways of like a closed AI where you can have the NPC generate language and dialogue without you having to write all of it. And that means your NPC always doesn't say the same thing, which is cool, but that could be opening you up to a lot of issues if the AI isn't closed anymore, if people give prompts inside the game that are problematic. And AI also, for instance, on Steam now you have a filter where you can refuse to see things that have AI in it. So if you will have to disclose it, and you might be closing yourself up to your audience. So it is like every publishing company will have different levels of averseness to AI, but you should disclose it if you're using it and see where it takes you, and then maybe consider pulling it back depending on how far in you are. And also you're killing the planet and burning trees. So just a thought. So will the team get on with the publisher? It's important that there is at least one slide where you're talking about yourselves a little bit, maybe how you came together, a quick presentation. You don't have to have a picture if you're not comfortable, but just a few things that explain to the team, especially if they've not met you face to face at a pitching event, that they would get on with you. You might be working with the publishing team 2, 3, 4 years, maybe more, and you want to be working with people that you won't want to be killing after 6 months, because you definitely will get like interpersonal tensions, and you can't plan for those. You don't know who you're going to be working with. It's not the people that you meet at pitching events who will be just the ones you're talking to. There'll be marketing people, etc. But you need to be like a cultural fit, and it works both for you and for them, like a job interview, right? You have to like who you're talking to and the values and what they represent, and they have to like you and think that you're going to get on and that you're the right people for the team, because there's a lot of collaboration in a publishing deal, and you need to stay sane. One small thing from the production team, that they want to have small file sizes. So if you want to include loads of fancy graphics or videos, I would say have a link on a drive and a video that's separate, or like embed it in your deck, but make sure that the document itself is easy to share, no more than 15 pages. If you must explain loads and loads of stuff, that's probably that's a GDD, that's not a pitching deck. Make sure that you're like focused and to the point in what you're saying, and if they want more, they will ask for it, but it has to be like the absolute best foot forward in a short and snappy presentation. I also wanted to just make you aware of a bunch of costs that the publishers will need to be thinking about. So it isn't for you guys to think about it, but this is what they are thinking about. And most people won't have QA solutions set up. That's what the publisher will help you with. QA is expensive, and depending on the complexity of what you're doing, it can get like quite crazy. And LQA, which is relevant because I was talking about localization and word counts earlier. So localization QA is something that you do separately and on top. So it's an extra fun cost that nobody thinks about, but it is absolutely necessary. Localization, as I said, can get really pricey, and also it's there's a lot of conversations about which languages, who's your target audience, where do you think you'll sell this best. So that's for the publisher to do, unless you have people, I guess I've seen it before, fan translations, or you have people who are bilingual in your team, but it's quite a lot of work, and it's not because you speak two languages that you're a qualified translator. So I would say like maybe as a last resort, but try to get professionals to do it first. Obviously, marketing budgets. I have seen decks where there is we think we'll spend X amount on marketing, and that's not really for you to decide. There are calculations and a sexy spreadsheet, which I'll explain later, for the marketing budget to be created. It isn't you who can say, I want 50K or 500K, like that's not how it works at all. So it's not just a random number, there's math behind it. One other thing I wanted to flag, which a lot of, I think, people don't think about when they're in the middle of making the project themselves, is you will probably want a community manager yourselves. You can have a publisher do all of the social media for you, that's completely fine. But the thing that I wanted you guys to think about is this is your IP. Most of the time you will keep the rights to your game, and you'll be able to take them back after a few years. In most contracts, 3 or 5 years is standard, and they keep rolling until you want them back. All of the work that's done to build the community, if it's on the publisher channel, and then for any reason you want to take your game back, you will lose all of that reach. So you should be thinking about building the community yourselves, and that also means an additional staffing cost of maybe it's a part-time CM, maybe it's a full-time CM. Can one of you do it sometimes? All of that human resource, I guess, element. That's and it's not just before launch, right? Like you build before launch, but for you to exist as a studio, you want to build people who are interested in everything that you're doing. So you need to keep going afterwards and keep people engaged. Discord is a great tool, but it's also like making the assets that you're going to be showing. If you're doing, I don't know, like a dev timeline that you're showing to your audience, all of that takes loads of effort. And while if you're a small team doing the game, you don't have the bandwidth to be doing those extra things and to be talking to people on Discord and making memes, etc. So this is for us a key resource at the collective that we've always asked, can you please think about this? We can, like, sometimes you could negotiate that your publisher pays for staff for X amount of time, or it's included in your budget when you're discussing how much money you need. But you should be owning this, because you will lose a lot of the effort and investment that's been put into your brand and game if it's not you who has it at the end of the contract. And then finally, I've said it a few times, but just buffer everything, 20% contingency. You have no idea what's going to happen, and that could literally be anything from a global pandemic to a new console to your dev kits haven't arrived because Nintendo hasn't made enough. Not that that's actually happened. I'm just saying, for the Switch, you had quite a long waiting list to get the dev kits for devs. It was, with the best effort in mind, we just couldn't get them. So it's just like there's a lot of moving parts that are completely outside of your control. You can only do what you know and control in your little team. But the more you know around it, the better prepared you will be in your pitch, and that will give publishers trust that you understand what you're talking about and that they can work with you longer term. Do we want to do any questions now before I move on to the marketing mindset? I don't know. If there's no questions, we can move on.
Yeah.
You can,
We've gone. Actually, you're going to say the exact same thing as me.
I was just going to say, like, if you've got questions, put it on the chat as well, so we see them, or you can unmute yourself. But yeah,
okay.
For now.
Cool. So marketing. So this is what I would be looking at separately from the Game Scout / production team. That's their mindset I've just presented. Now this is what I would be looking at when I look at a pitch. In an ideal scenario, you'll have one of each to look at your pitch, or once you've passed the production layer of vetting, then they'll send it to someone like me and say, hey, do you think you can sell this? So that's really like the main question is, your game could have amazing mechanics, but we're not the right people for it, or we don't have the expertise as well. That's the real thing, right? I've done a lot of fighting games, but I don't play them, so I'm like, do I have someone who has the knowledge to represent this properly when it comes to communications and making interesting assets? That's, like one out of many possible reasons why the game wouldn't be sellable for us. That also means, in the context of the market right now, is this the right game? Have I seen 12 of those before? And right now is not the right time to be doing this. So yeah, this isn't for you to say, yes, my game is sellable. They will have their own criteria based on everybody's. There's also like a personal bias, let's be honest, but that's kind of fitting into my second bullet point. Maybe we have like 3 games launching next year, and you're saying you want your game to also launch next year, and you don't know that our timeline is full up, and that either we really want your game and we might ask you to delay and pay you longer term, or we say this is great but not for us, and one of the reasons could be the timeline is full, or you're asking and we've already signed a bunch of visual novels and yours is also narrative and we have too many at the same time, and that doesn't work for the market. Or is the general market context really bad? So at the moment, for instance, I think a lot of companies are quite risk adverse because there's just a lot of stuff being cancelled or suspended or closed down, and so people are being very picky with what they want to be doing. It's not really on you, it's just like right now that's how things are. So just a touch of real negativity, but that's where we are right now. One thing for everybody to talk about, especially when you're thinking about console porting, or if you want to be doing anything on console, it helps a lot if you're in a first-party show, right? Like a State of Play, a Nintendo Direct, those kind of things. And things that will help a marketer get you there is, do you have any special first-party integration? So for PlayStation, they have the PS5 pillars. So do you have haptics when you're doing your controller support, that kind of thing? Are you supporting any particular technology? If you're PC first, are you, I don't know, like thinking about, what is it, the Razer Chroma stuff, so we can talk to them, or NVIDIA integration, or AMD? Like there's a whole bunch of stuff. Obviously, it's quite big scope on those things, but in an ideal scenario, your publisher will have contacts and will try to get extra support. So if there's anything that you've already thought about that will be really specific to your platform, it's just, what was I going to say? Like Microsoft loves at the moment Power Wash Simulator, which I worked on. Like Microsoft absolutely loves it because it's a 3 or, PEGI 3 or E for everyone, which means it's really easy to market and promote in all of that stuff because it's safe, right? There's no guns, everybody can look at it. It's so are there things like that? Nintendo, they like a wide range of things, but their channels do have a family-friendly angle, so they might be wanting, like it helps if you have something that's a bit cutesy and fits with the brand. That doesn't mean they won't support you if it doesn't. It's just, there are things that might help angle in that direction. How does the game look? So that's, again, a little bit based on personal taste, but if you have an art style that's really hard to look at or really polarizing, like a lot of people don't like anime, they immediately think it's cartoonish and for children and it's not for them. You can have the best game in the world, but you're alienating people. I'm not saying don't do it, just be aware there are things like that will immediately put people off, and you can't help it, right? But also in your deck, you should have assets and branding, right, to show what your game looks like. And if you should have like artwork, right, at least one piece, ideally more, character art, UI, little elements, color choices as well. And so for me, I'm looking at it saying, yes, does it look good, but also what kind of assets do you have? And am I gonna need to, in my marketing budget, do you need someone to commission artwork so you can have a Steam page that's really tidy? Do you need a special artist, or can we do something internally with you? So that's a real conversation around art assets, that doesn't stop. And also, if I need one person to do one piece of art, do I then need like a freelancer to continue doing stuff for me in the background? So it's just like it becomes a financial concern as well as a visual one. And how much support are you going to need? Do you have marketing artists in your team? Are they just there for a minute or two? A real, like, probably one of the biggest points of contention and tension for me with devs is I'm coming in asking for loads of assets close to launch while they're really busy finishing the game. And it's not fair on anyone, but also I need to sell the game, you need to make the game. The earlier you can have those conversations and think about those resources and say, here is what the plan is, or here is what we're going to need. Can you please pay for this, support us? The less tension you will have later on. It'll make everyone slightly happier. It's still hard around launch time. Are we the right partner for this product? So this is more about the branding on my side. So if all we do is super serious adult shooters and you're coming in with a really cute, I don't know, like 3D platformer with adorable little girls and ponies, probably not the right match in terms of like who we usually talk to and who we know how to talk to versus what you need. Which isn't to say that everybody has like only one type of thing they like to do. Most people are quite varied, but it's just, for instance, Square Enix doesn't sign games that look Japanese because we're already Japanese, so we don't need to be pitched a game that's super anime, right? That would be cannibalizing our own audience. So it's just like have a look, I guess, at who you want to be pitching and what they're already doing to make sure that it isn't like a huge mismatch because you know, waste your time, their time, and it's a shame. Territories and rights and languages. So one thing that you might want to say is, or think about is obviously when you're creating your own game, you technically have global rights. So if you're pitching to someone in the UK, are they going to be a UK only team? Are they going to be able to support you for Europe? Are they going to be able to support you for America? And when I say America, I mean North and South America, not just the US. And do they have any Asian connections? Do you have any aspirations to be looking at a worldwide release? So Steam is worldwide. That doesn't mean that you'll find success if you don't have localization and also support with, if it's not them publishing directly, maybe they have an agency or a partner over there that can help make promotions because they use different social channels, as I'm sure you know, and also like the language and the culture is really different. So you might be needing to produce different assets for China than you would do for France, and that's okay. But have a think about where you think your game is going to succeed, really top level stuff, and just, you know, make a note, like we're looking for a Western publisher, we're looking for a global release, and we think we want X amount of languages, and based on how your game looks and what it is, there will be recommendations. So if you have a simulator, translate it in German. Germany fucking loves simulators. They're very successful over there. If you've got something that's really cartoonish, do maybe Korean, Mandarin, right? They're interested, and they will respond a lot better if it's in their language. And I don't mean just inside the game, but your Steam page needs to be localized. Your trailers need to be localized. Are you getting a PR agency that can help push you on Weibo in China because you have no way of getting it by yourself here because you can't speak the language most of the time, and also you can't access it without a VPN. So there's a whole bunch of stuff there that needs to at least be thought about. And also, if you're signing with someone and you're giving away your global rights, but they don't have anyone who's doing anything in Asia, don't give away your global rights. Say, hey, you can do this, I'll give you the rights for this, but keep the rest and see if you can find a partner. And there are shows in Asia like China Joy, there's stuff in Taiwan, there's stuff in Singapore a lot, there's stuff everywhere. Obviously you might have to go there, but all I'm saying is don't give away everything because it's the easy way out. You might be able to get something if you start getting a bit of traction with other publishers in other territories, or even just like some marketing agency help outside of Europe. So just be aware that there's a lot of business stuff that could be done that you could give away, and then you need to claw them back, and that's a legal discussion, that's an amendment to contract that takes a while. There are partners who do stuff in Asia who speak English now. I know the guys from Little Goody Two Shoes worked with Komodo They are based in Japan, but they have an office in the US, so they can help you with Asia, right? I'm not saying them specifically, but there are people who exist who can do this for you. So don't just go with the first contract and not think about this. Any opportunities for me to facilitate the marketing? So have you got space and bandwidth for a demo or a beta or early access, whatever the thing is? Especially Steam Next Fest, it has a bit less power than when it started, but it's still really relevant and it's a free thing, but it means you have to make a demo for me to put it in Steam Next Fest. And then I need an ongoing carousel of fresh assets. Who's producing those? So as I was saying earlier, do you have an artist? Do I need to hire someone? Do you need to hire someone? Have you got a roadmap of when you're going to create things as well? Because I need to know what's coming and when. If I'm, look, new character for a fighting game, then I need to have that roadmap to plan my communication campaign as well. And then this is the last things I've added in there, extra content for partners or first parties or Twitch drops. This is probably a bit more like big game vibes, but if you have the ability to, I don't know, a skin, something cosmetic, a cute, like a gold version of something that you can give to like an influencer as an exclusive thing that they can give to their followers. It doesn't have to be really complicated, but it does make a difference in the conversations that we have when we're trying to sell your game to first parties. Maybe we want like a really exclusive influencer thing, etc. Those things will help sell it. But when we start thinking about it, you've probably already moved on quite a long way away from that kind of early planning of the development. And you might be saying, don't have time for this. It's too expensive, or you're taking me away from some really important part of the development. I can't afford to stop right now. And then we might be losing an opportunity. So if you have anything in your game that could be made into a slightly different skin, or I don't know, like a in-game currency or XP boost, whatever it is, you can see what other people are doing when they're launching a game. And it doesn't have to be very complex. It's just especially because influencers are the biggest marketing thing right now. If you can give them something, you can link with a Twitch drop, whatever, it might really help, and it might, reach more people because people like free stuff. So just something to think about. And then I guess I put any marketable hooks in and out of the game. So what's the thing I'm going to be spearheading my comms with? Is that inside the game? But what I was saying in the previous slide about the production, the developer pedigree is kind of this as well. Like, can I say, from the voice of Doug Cockle, the guy who did The Witcher, he does other stuff, right? So even though I worked on, what was it called? I only remember the project code name right now, but he worked on a Square game as the narrator voice, and that was definitely like a thing we mentioned, although he wasn't the main character. Like, hey, the voice of The Witcher, and also the music of what's his name, Ramin Djawadi, who did Game of Thrones and a bunch of other amazing things. So it's just like, what are the things we can use? Is it an accolade? Is it that you've done something cool? Is it that the game has something really unique? We're gonna sell. Cool. That's it on the marketing things. I don't know if there's been any questions in the meantime.
I have a question. Or you also just reminded me. I saw another. I keep getting it. I don't know what the game's called, but it's a shooter, but it has portals. And one of the adverts is the best portals since ... and that's the whole thing. And it's like, oh, I know what you're talking about. You're comparing this to a game that I already love. Oh, I should play this. My question is about your all of these things you need to remember for your pitch deck and when you're talking to a salesperson. And one of the things we tell our software students on a regular basis, and actually the game dev students, is, hey, get in contact with people on LinkedIn, like link up with people before you try and apply for a job with them, before you try and link with them, just like make a connection with a real human. All of these things, like for example, is this the right partner for your product? Is that the sort of thing you can ask someone on LinkedIn that works at the company, or is that inappropriate when it comes to like pitching games? Where's the line?
I think it would be very much a case-by-case thing. I would be surprised if most people replied, in the sense that it's just like you get a lot of, at least since I joined Square Enix, because you have the name Square Enix in your profile, you get a lot of cold sell people trying to get you like, hey, my agency does this and I think your thing could be interesting. And just so you get a lot of requests for connections, and I've actually maxed out mine and I just let it run. It just deletes the bottom one and add a new one. And then a lot of cold messages about usually just trying to sell me something. So I'm not saying that nobody would ever help you. It's just that if you're going for someone who's quite visible, they are most likely also overrun by questions and messages that have nothing to do with what they're interested in. So it's more like a low return on investment on this one.
It's good to know. That's good to know. That's why no one's replying to my message. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's just like LinkedIn has become a bit of a cesspool. So it is useful to find jobs and see what's happening and talk to recruiters, but at the same time, there's a bunch of like really unhelpful people in there who are taking space that you could be taking instead. But this is the internet for you, I suppose.
Thanks.
Oh, so this is a really heavy slide. I'm sorry, I could have made more slides, but then we would have had more slides to go through. So everything that I could think of sort of synthesized in the most common mistakes that my colleagues and I can see in presentations that we've seen across many years. Presentation in and of itself is probably the biggest thing. So I mentioned in the call yesterday, we do sometimes get a white word page with nothing on it. There is also people who might be like over designing it. So your game is a bit quirky, or you have like really bright colors and fun assets. It still has to be professional, right? It can't be just white background and black text, or the other way around. But it's that balance between really quirky, too quirky, and really drab, bordering on unprofessional. So I would really encourage people to try to use designing tools, get some feedback, and also remember, make your game accessible in terms of the visuals of what you're doing. So like no bright colors overlapping. Think about the size of the fonts. You don't know who's going to look at your deck, and there might be people who have, I don't know, brain damage. I have a colleague who's got, he used to do boxing, and now he can't stand to look at anything that isn't on a dark background because it hurts his brain. That's a real thing. So you have no idea what the, are they going to need text to speech because they're visually impaired, but they're still, there's loads of stuff like this. And also over design sometimes looks a bit, maybe not childish, but, unprepared, or like, look at me, I put all of the things in. And it's like, no, just chill. Cohesive, simple, some personality. You're still trying to sell a game, and it's still a fun industry we work in, but turn it down or turn it up depending on where you are. I also want to flag something I learned in business school that's still true. People remember about 15% of your presentation. You'll remember maybe less on this call. So at the end of the day, what is the golden thread, or like the final message that you need people to remember about your pitch, right? So you're going to be giving loads of details about yourself, about your mechanics, about where you are, etc. Start and finish with a thread of communication that isn't just, like a thank you slide, but also, here is the one thing I need. We really want to work with you. Here is why. It doesn't have to be really lengthy or in your face. It's just remember that you got to trim it down so that you have, visual hierarchy. Are things at the top really visible that people will like latch on to more, and that they will keep on coming back to when they're looking at your deck. I would really encourage people to have a look on resources online about stuff like visual hierarchy, layouts, color theory. It's not that complicated, but it's just like, if it's dark on navy blue on gray, I won't see any of it. So speaking from literal experience once again, there are also GDC presentations that are made available on YouTube, where you can look at people explaining, here are our recommendations on how to make pitch decks and how to pitch, right? So I mentioned it yesterday, but again, Rami Ismail is a great resource. There are people out there who are trying to help you help yourselves. So have some time, not just in the content, right, but in how you're showing it to people, because a deck that's really hard to look at or makes your game look really drab when it isn't will do you a disservice. The next thing for me is data, which I've seen a fair amount of hey, so my game is like this, and I think I will be selling 1.8 million units because I looked at my competitors and they sold X amount. And then I Google it, and all of the numbers are wrong, and all it took was a 5-second Google. That drives me crazy, especially because I work with a lot of data. So I would encourage you, if you must, which you really don't, make it verifiable, right? So you're looking for public statements for the company themselves. It happens quite often. Hey, we've sold 1 million unit. Woo! So you say they've sold at least 1 million unit. That's a, again, I would mostly discourage it, but if you feel really strongly about something, only trustworthy sources, and there's really not that many, by the way. So stuff like VG charts is mostly made up. There's a bunch of other VG things out there. None of it is actually that relevant. There are teams, Square, but many other people actually have teams who are dedicated to finding that information. There are businesses in the UK, it's called GFK. You can pay to get resources based on like competitors. It's not super expensive for one set of data, but it can like scale up quite a bit. The data that you get from those people is also not complete. There's plenty of people like Nintendo who don't share digital data. So a lot of what they're saying is only physical sales, which is less than 40% now of sales. So yeah, only look for actual statements that come from trusted sources, not just like the IGN article, but look where they got it from, right? And then if you must pull it from there, don't just think that people are coming up with correct numbers. There's a lot of misinformation about this out there. Also, sales, not the same as downloads or players. Usually that's because you have like you have free weekends, or you have a Game Pass deal or a PlayStation Plus deal, right? But there are small differences there that mean that doesn't mean they sold X amount of units, right? Just that they had people play their game for a while, or they downloaded them on their computers. That doesn't even mean they opened the game. They just downloaded it. Just as a small note. I've seen a lot of marketing slides, which most of the time, because that isn't your specialty, will not be doing you any favors, because you're kind of making like the matrix, right? The X and Y grid thing that everybody does with like little constellations of stuff. Like, please don't do it. Please don't do it. They don't actually mean anything. You can make them say anything you want, and therefore they have no actual value. If you must be doing a diagram of some kind because you're trying to say, I have the art style like this and the gameplay like this, but the narrative of this, then use a Venn diagram. Or something simple, like PowerPoint has a lot of graphs. Just don't make matrices, they're rubbish. And I would just encourage you, like, if you're not sure what you're wanting to say, I would rather you skip it. If you're pitching, you're probably looking for someone who has that expertise to help you out, and it will be their job to be coming up with who your competitors are, etc. So talk about your inspirations or the people you're hoping to compete against, but don't try to tell me that you're going to sell as much as Cult of the Lamb, or that you're going to be comparing yourself to, I don't know, like a Blizzard game. It's just completely out of scope. In the same vein, I've seen key pillars or features, or however you're calling it, your USPs, be really unspecified. So it's something I said also yesterday, talking about branding. If you can use the words for any game in your genre, then your game isn't special, and you're not getting people's attention because it isn't specialized enough. So I would really encourage you to spend some time. With my boss, we sometimes spend something like 6 hours a week doing adjective work on the brand pyramid. It's dreary. You don't have to spend 6 hours on adjectives. The thesaurus is your best friend, by the way. But just make sure that what you're selling, your features, your mechanics, what is it that make them different, or the combination that makes them interesting and unique, right? So that I can immediately grasp what you're selling that I want to sell myself. And then, yeah, just don't slap any old random words. It won't help your pitch at all. Similar things, I guess, still in the marketing department. Audience profiling is, again, a completely different job, I would say in ballpark, there is a website that's mostly US based called Newzoo, which I put in the slide. They do like global, was it like gaming audience 2024, and they have a report every year. That's most of it is free. You could also pay for it, but I don't think it's necessary at this stage. Understanding who your audience is and getting data to back it up is actually really hard to come by. Again, that's the job of the publisher, to be doing that work and have that knowledge for you. I would encourage you to have a think, I guess, about who you're talking to in your community without asking for personal data. That's a big GDPR breach right now. But also, if you're looking at games that are similar to yours on Steam, for instance, how many concurrent players can you see? That's data that's available, right? What languages have they made in the Steam page? Because that tells you maybe there's an audience like in Italy that I hadn't thought about, that people actually really enjoy. Like if you see a pattern of loads of competitors having a specific language, or look at the amount of reviews, the complaints on the forum, and understand like who are the people, what are they looking for that you could be fixing or addressing in your game. But when it comes to saying, I'm looking after, like young women between 15 and 25 who love cats, and older men 35 to 55 who used to love the original Doom. And I guess the behavior that goes with it, it's called psychographics. There are research agencies that pull that data for you. We don't pull it out of thin air. You usually have to pay for it. That's really expensive and quite time consuming. So I would say try to keep it to things that you can witness, that are tangible. It's the same as the data thing I was saying earlier. It has to be things that are verifiable, that you can talk about, that are true. And don't extrapolate on where you think people are if you don't have any reason to think that. So obviously, if all of your interactions come from YouTube, then you know that YouTube is a great place to advertise. But if you're not sure, if you've not started that process and that communication, don't do it. And one other thing I wanted to mention is a lot of smaller publishers might be showing you, we will be targeting all of those people of 3 or 4 audience profiles. Most of the times that's bullshit, because you won't have the money to advertise to them. So for most games, unless you have AAA budgets, 2 audiences is better. There will be people you can address, I guess, for free with your communications, who will naturally hear about your game because they're in the same circle, so you don't need to advertise to them. That's your core fans. But thinking that you're going to be targeting 5 different people who all like different things, and that means you would have to make assets for all of them that's slightly different messaging, A/B testing, languages. There's a lot of investment that goes into this. It's the most important part of the marketing that I would do after a game is signed. Don't let people swindle you in thinking that there's like loads of audiences out there, just 2 buckets, that's enough, move on. Nobody has the money to be advertising like Cyberpunk does. So finally, budgets. I think I've said this earlier, but I will reiterate. A pitch saying, I think I need X amount of marketing money, is mostly pulled out of thin air. So I wanted to give you a bit more context about how those numbers get made. So most publishers will have either a team or at least one person who is the business development person, and they have a magical spreadsheet that's truly dreadful to look at, and they say, I think your game will be sold at £20, that's $25, 25 euros. And they put it in a spreadsheet, and they know that after 6 or 8 months your game will be 20% off, and then 30, and then 40, and then there'll be a drop at 50, whatever. So they have a thing that calculates, I guess, all of the possibilities of where your game is going to sell at different price points throughout your contract length, so usually 3 years, maybe 5. And they say, we think we will have X revenue, the magical number, what's your revenue? And from there, they will take a percentage of this forecast and say, this is your marketing budget. So the percentage used to be between 20 and 15%. It's gone down to 10 in a lot of places. It can go as low as 8%. So it's every publisher will have their own formula and their own percentage. I'm just trying to explain why and how that number comes about. So it's about the commercial viability of your project. If they think your game is going to sell 2,000 units, your marketing budget will be tiny. If they think you can sell 200,000 units, then suddenly you will have a better number. I will also say a lot of publishers will never tell you the exact marketing budget. I've been actively told not to share that with devs before. So don't be surprised, but they will tell you, we're giving you 10%. It'll be in the contract, right? Like 10% of your revenue is marketing budget. I will also add one more thing. I hope that's not too many like number stuff, but you have your minimum guarantee, which is the money the publisher gives you. And then the idea is that they will make that money back. It's called recouping. And then you will make profit. So once you make profit, the money goes back to you in the whatever split it is. Hopefully it's 70-30 in your favor. Everybody's different. But once you make profit, you can also keep on making marketing money, right? Because the revenue keeps on coming in, so you keep on making marketing money. So it would be on you to make sure that your publisher keeps on making marketing, and if they're not, then that money needs to go back to you in your wallet. Just as a side note, that can be something that's easily forgotten and a point of contention between dev and publisher. So just make sure that the contract says, if you're not spending any more marketing and promoting my game, give me my money back instead of whatever it is you're doing with it. True story. And then, yeah, so please make sure that you've thought about paying yourself and your team. And as I said earlier, I would always encourage people to budget for a community or social media manager all the way through post-launch, not just like your life doesn't end at launch. You will have post-launch support, ideally patches, maybe extra content if things go really well. So yeah, long-term thinking is important. And that's everything.
Thank you so much, Anne-Lou. Really, really, really valuable.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if there are at least a few questions.
I think
So
someone's raised their hands, a couple of people.
magic, nice, awesome. Go for it, Imogen.
Yeah.
All right, actually, I'll hand over to you.
Let me just put the hand icon down. I was wondering, when you were going over the first slide and talking to the production manager team, the question only came up to me after the fact, but because you had a bunch of bullet points about things that you need to watch out for, and I want to know what are the red flags are for when you're looking for artists to work with when it comes to either looking for branding assets or things like, you want extra like cover art for inlays and stuff like that. So what have you seen in a portfolio where you've directly looked at it and it's gone, absolutely not, we cannot work with this person for what reason or another?
I don't know that I've ever seen like massive red flags. The biggest difficulty for me is sometimes that I'm trying to commission someone and then the devs don't agree with what I want, or the other way around. And then there's a lot of like, I guess your personal appreciation of the art is the real trick. And the other thing for me is, in the portfolio, have you done anything that has that either it's the same type of work that you've done, so as you say, like cover art or anything, or is there anything like in a more professional setting? Because a lot of people can do like, oh, I like to make characters. That doesn't mean that you can create a whole scene for me with background and composition, and that you can listen to the brief, right? So if you can show me that you've done something professional led, so you can say like commission for clients, that kind of thing, right? So you can some clients will give you permission to like have their logo on the deck. You should ask when you're doing something. You say like, this was personal, professional, this was X person commissioning this, and you can just have like a little bit of text. If you're doing like a PDF, don't have the image fully blown up, have like a light layout, and then you can say this was a commission X, like whatever your brief was, just in a few words, so people understand that you've been working in this professional setting and that you've been able to follow brief to completion, rather than I just like to make art and I'm hoping that you'll commission me, but actually I've never followed this before. That's probably the biggest difficulty, right? You see people who can do really great stuff in their portfolio deck, and then they're, I don't know, like super depressed, or they have ADHD, and unfortunately they never reply to your emails. That's actually not happened to me. I'm just saying, it's like, can I trust you to do that thing professionally rather than just because you like to make art?
Okay. Sorry, just in addition to that, with portfolios, because sometimes I have a bit of difficulty deciding how much text to put in a portfolio because I'm mainly art based. Do you think it's helpful to have things like sort of like visual development or like sketches to show a person how you led up to a final design, or should you just have the final design? Because I've never really received like a good answer for that, because a lot of people will say, no, just put the final thing, no one cares about progress. But other people are like, but we want progress because we want to see how you work. But everyone says something different, and it's very, very difficult to try and plan a portfolio.
No, I understand that. Most of the portfolios that I've seen usually just show final presentation because they're saying, here is everything I've done. However, if let's say you're applying to support a dev team, I think it would be helpful that you start off with, look at the big stuff, right? Like your best things up front, because you have no guarantee that someone's going to go through your potentially like 50-page long deck of stuff that you've done. Although I wouldn't recommend 50 pages, but you know, the more things you do, the more you want to show them. So you start with the best stuff up front. I would encourage you to say a bit like, you know, few things, here is my process, and then maybe you show like concept to final, just so people understand how you get things. Or I'm an artist and I like to use a graphic tablet, or I like to draw and then put it in Photoshop separately, right? So just people understand what are your tools as well, because they might be looking for a specific technique or style, or what's the word, medium. So it's just so people know what they're getting with you and all of the things that you can do, obviously, not just the primary stuff.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I think there was Thomas had his hand up.
Oh, did he? Thomas.
Well, it was a mistake, but I think I have thought of a question at the very least. Funny enough, in kind of same thing with like with imaging, with the idea of like red flags and whatnot. More towards, I guess, say the copyright sort of way. Is there a sort of area in which it is easier to tell where like sort of a line is? Because there are certain games where like obviously they follow a same sort of pattern, but they are still fundamentally different games. But like, you know, there are certain situations that arise more recently with like say Nintendo and Power World, where like they are different games, but there's still like some overlap where Nintendo thought that they had a sort of a plan. Is there a way to kind of, I guess, say, know when you're sort of on that cusp?
Yes, so it's so funny you mentioned Nintendo and Power World, because I was going to use that example. I think Nintendo is probably one of the most notorious for going after people who they feel have infringed on their patents and copyrights, which is their right. So if you're making something, even if it has nothing to do with Nintendo, right, look at it and think to yourself, if I send this to Nintendo, would I be sued or not? And by the way, I've worked on a game which was catching monsters. Some of the assets we weren't sure about, and before the game was announced and released, we did actually get in touch with Nintendo directly to say, what do you think? And is this okay? And we did get a reply that said, as long as you don't look like you're directly ripping our literal assets, right? So it's, if like Power World, I guess there have been contentious monster designs about like, have you just used a monster generation of mixing two of them up? For instance, the Nintendo doesn't own the concept of a yellow mouse that does electricity. However, if your yellow mouse looks suspiciously like Pikachu, then you would be in trouble, right? So it's like, is it a concept that someone actually owns? Because the pattern with Power World is about the monster catching with the ball thing. That's what they were suing for specifically. Or is it that it's like, it's similar, but fundamentally I look at it and I don't see Pikachu in your monster design? That's fine, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Cool. What do we have in the chat? Jake says, I'm assuming a lot of this translates to pitching for smaller scale projects like local councils, etc.
Yes, absolutely. I think what you're pitching and how you're pitching it should translate to any type of pitching that you're going to do. The biggest thing I wanted to communicate is that you need to inspire, I guess, a modicum of trust in the people who are you're asking for money, right, most of the time. So how do they know that you're going to deliver on what you're doing, that they can trust you to finish your project, and that you have a vision that will actually go somewhere? Not every game has to sell loads of units. That's not the only metric for success, right? You could be an indie darling, you could just be great at events, and it's, that I've worked on loads of games that were not asking for loads of money and were successful in the scope of what they were asking for, because they made their money back and then some profit, and it was cute and it was nice, and we moved on. It's just, like inspiring that level of I control what I'm doing. I'm not just asking you for money with a few words on a page. I can show you demonstrably that I've started working on it and thinking about it, and that I will manage this project. So it's just like, I own this, I control it, I will deliver it.
Yeah, absolutely. Any more questions? Is there anything in the chat? I had a question, which is more about like the marketing side of things, which is, you mentioned yesterday that the announcement of a game is almost as important or more important than the release itself. At what point during development do you decide, all right, this is where I need to announce my game? Does it have to be like fully functional, or it can be earlier as well?
No, it really depends on your game. I wouldn't announce without having anything to show, right? So is it that you have a really sexy in-engine camera, but you're not really showing gameplay, right? You're just showing something that's inside, or you have a story game, so you're talking about you're opening up to the narrative hook of what you're selling, and it doesn't need to have loads of actual footage, or the art doesn't have to be final. I will say the other thing that makes a difference is, do you have an opportunity that you don't want to miss? So if you're lucky, I guess, and arriving at the right time, there might be like a first party show, like the indie directs, they're called, right? Can you get in there, and then you weren't really planning on it, but you can just about get in, and they've accepted you. Is there a Steam Next Fest, or is there something that's going to really help you up? I would definitely encourage people to like try and work towards something like this to get the boost. And when I said the announcement is the biggest moment, when you look at Google Trends for the amount of like noise there is about a keyword like, let's say, cyberpunk, you'll see like a graph that goes announcement really high, and then flatline, and then there'll be like maybe like a release date bump, maybe a gameplay bump, and then there'll be like a launch bump that's also high. But in terms of the volume of, like the sentiments, the social mentions, the PR, usually the announcement is the biggest. Like obviously launch is super important, and post-launch, etc. But if your first peak is very small, then everything else will continue to be quite like smaller. So obviously making the biggest noise when you go out is important. There are exceptions to every rule, by the way. It's just what we've noticed as a pattern across the years is always like, if you don't make enough noise at first, then you will struggle to sort of take off for your pre-orders, your wish lists.
Yeah, definitely.
Off the back of that, and Lou, so quite often I've got a lot of people on my YouTube algorithm has figured out this guy likes to see people developing games, and so I'll get lots of indie game developers who are just working on their own, and just they do a short every time they make a small update to their game or they add a feature or something. Would you say that helps a pitch? Like, look, we've got this following, or is that hinders it? Like, you've given everything away. I don't know. Like, have you had any pitches where people are like, I've got a following of 1,000 people who watch my shorts when I update my game?
I've actually never seen that. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I think it's a good idea, because you're doing the work and you're owning your community. So you're already thinking about how you're presenting yourself. Not every game will be suitable for it. And also not every person wants to be on YouTube talking about their stuff all the time. The idea of showing everything. If you only have like 1,000 people watching you, then you haven't reached that far, so you haven't like sunk the ship, because you've shown some stuff already. And there's pretty successful examples of people who do early access. Hades 2, right? Obviously they're like top level early access examples, but you could say, hey, you've shown everything already. Why would I buy your game when I don't have any surprises? But that's not, it still works. So if you have the bandwidth, if your game is suited to it, if you find your audience, especially on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, by doing this before you even start any marketing, nobody will say, oh, I don't want your game because you've already done work for me. That's really silly.
Cool. That's it. Thank you.
Robert.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
I was wondering what your thoughts are on using AI in games, like for art and things like that, because I've already kind of started making some sprites for my RPG using like AI and things, and also got plans trying to make like an AI cutscene for my games. Hopefully it'll match up if it works. I don't know, if it's like AI generated video. But do you think that's a bit too much trouble than it's worth if like Steam open up a filter? So would people actually want to play that?
I mean, have a look at what's hidden behind that filter. There's actually more games than you think, because a lot of people use AI in different ways. So it's a really tricky thing. There's so many intense opinions about AI. If you've already started, and also if you need it because that's your resource right now, then I'm not going to say don't do it, right? Like what's your option if you don't use AI right now? Do you have the money to get someone to do CGI cutscenes for you, right? That CGI is crazy.
I guess I'd have to get some kind of funding and then pay someone eventually if it wasn't for AI, but AI makes it a whole lot easier.
AI is also really helpful. I can't deny that. I think it's like, if you are going to pitch for funding or a publisher, make sure you disclose it, because you don't want any negative backlash of somebody goes in and sees that you've used AI and goes like, this guy, blah, 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 like that's silly. Transparency will help you in this case. Maybe some people will say no to you because of it, but I do think opinions and attitudes will be changing in the next 2 years probably about using AI, because it's getting good so quickly. It's already changed so much in the past 2 years. So I wouldn't encourage people to do it if they have another option. If you don't, and this is the best way forward right now, that doesn't mean your assets can be replaced if you get funding as well, right? Like it's just you need to move forward. So keep going, see how people react to it, but also don't hide it, and don't make sure that your stuff isn't like actively stealing other people's intellectual property in a way that's, that's what people are so upset about, that you're not like saying copy this art but do it for free, right? That's the biggest problem. So just be really mindful about the type of AI you're using, the type of prompts you're doing. How are you training it? Are you using your own stuff? Are you, just be mindful.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Cool.
Awesome. Are there any more questions in the chat? Or you can raise your hands as well. Oh, I have one more. What factors do you think affect the prices, the price at which you sell the game? And there's like all these models like free to play and stuff like that. Say you're publishing on mobile is usually like a free game. So what are the different factors do you think affect the pricing of it itself?
Well, that's a really big question. It used to be about COGS, cost of goods, right? So there's that's why Nintendo games are more expensive on physical platforms, is because Nintendo sells us the cartridge for more money than any of the other manufacturers. Little industry tidbit there. Basically, some research has been done, I think, by Microsoft, that showed that if your game is like around 20, like the difference between $12 and $20 is minimal. So if you need to sell your game, or if you want to sell your game under $10, that's a different mindset. But if you want to sell your game at like $14, you can also sell it at 20 and just pocket the difference because people will buy it in that price range. I think it's like, who are your competitors really? Who are you going against? And what is the scope of what you're doing? If you're selling a game that lasts 3 hours max and has no replayability, and you're trying to sell it for $30, people will have a problem with it. But if you're selling a game that's 60 hours of content for $20, which sounds actually crazy when I say it like that, sell it for more than that. It's like, what is the scope of what you're doing? How are other people doing? Because if everybody's doing a platformer selling it at $5, but you're coming in at 10, then you will also struggle. So be aware of the market around you. And then to answer stuff around the free-to-play, the point of all of those games like Fortnite, etc., Warframe, is that they've put their hooks in you because it was free. So there is no, it's called barrier to entry, right? So you don't need to be convinced to download it, and you can play with your friends, right? Like the social aspect also makes a massive difference. And once they've got the hooks in you, you're more likely to give them actual money with microtransactions or subscription models later on. Equally, having a really large player base, so looking at Fortnite, which is doing an insanely good job with their brand partnerships, they make money every time they get they might be paying Ariana Grande to do a concert inside the thing, but they've also made a deal with Disney, and they've obviously they're making money somewhere, right? So the fact that they can say I have no idea how many people they have, but obviously a lot. And they can say to Disney or whomever, I can show your content to X amount of people who play daily, then they get a really interesting longer term partnership. So there might be stuff coming in the future that we don't know about. And for them, it's the brand building element. So they just got you for one purchase one time and you've played it and then you'll never look at it again. As Tim is saying in chat, right? You will keep on coming back. You might be more and more convinced to buy MTXs, but you might also get other people to play with you, maybe your children, maybe your friends, your partner, whatever. And therefore, their player base grows, and that number will get them more money, more partnerships, more investors as well, because they're a publicly listed company, I'm sure. It's just a completely different mindset. And also it's the time frame. If you have one game that you're selling one time, at some point, you will stop selling, and that's the end of your life cycle. You'll just trickle a few sales here and there when your game is discounted. Whereas Fortnite and other live games like this, their point is that they keep going for 10 years more. And so their mindset, their strategy level is a totally different scale.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that. Tom, your hands up.
I just had a thought. So obviously with the idea of pricing and whatnot, obviously always being a very precarious position, because obviously what might be cheap here might be expensive somewhere else. Say £30 here might be nearly impossible to pay for in say Brazil, because Brazil has a very unfortunately GDP sort of situation where it's quite low down, so a lot of the time they sort of do piracy and whatnot to play certain games. It's a very strange question, but how when certain indie devs have their game pirated, a lot of them often take the stance of if you can't afford it, that's fine. Just if you enjoy the game enough and you have the spare cash, feel free to buy it properly so that you can well, I would say fund, but show appreciation for the game. What is that kind of a good stance to take? Would you say, or would that be more of a one that you'd be kind of against in most regards? It's a very strange and kind of hard to answer question, but it's just one that's kind of in my mind.
No, it's completely fine. I'm kind of pro that mindset because there have been plenty of studies that show that piracy does not affect sales. So if someone's pirating a game, they're most likely not going to buy it. I know people who pirate to see, do I want the game? And then they buy it to support the devs. But the reality is people who pirate are most likely not giving you their money, so it doesn't actually change how much money you can expect to make on the game. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is some publishers will have like a fixed price policy where they control the exchange rate, especially on Steam, and therefore that makes the game like really inaccessible in countries like Russia, where the ruble like is currently worth absolutely nothing, or Brazil, or most of South America or Africa, whatever, right? So some people do that deliberately because they're worried about you could change your Steam location and then get the game for essentially like €3 because you're using someone else's currency. So they don't want to lose the money. That's why that happens. However, you can also manually override that and make your price like appropriate to the cost of living in each country, right? You can control what's being sold on your store pages manually for each territory if you want. So it's also a conversation to have with your publisher if you have one, or when you're setting yourself up on your store pages, that you can make that decision yourself. You don't have to be super mean to the poor Brazilians who have less buying power than we do. It's some people will say, oh, that's what's it called? Like you're losing money, you're leaving money on the table. I'm not entirely sure that's true, because I think it can come across quite greedy if you're a smaller dev, that you're like, no, I'll just sell my game at full price regardless. So yeah, it's your personal decision always, but I would encourage people to actually do dynamic pricing based on regions.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got one more question in the chat, which is, if you are using AI for debugging code during development, do you have to flag it for AI use? I don't mean using it to generate blocks of code from scratch, but like I think it's more about debugging and stuff like that.
That's a good question. I can't speak to that with certainty because I have a legal team who would know more than me. I guess it's about like what you're presenting. Like, has it actively changed your assets or pulled from other people's property, that kind of thing? I would disclose it just to be safe, that not to the public, but like if you're pitching or anything, I would ask that question and see how they feel. It depends how much the AI actually like changed your code versus, you know, you've used ChatGPT to spell check, but then you will manually redo your stuff, right? So because no, I would make sure, like, if you're doing game code with AI, not just assets but actual development, I would also flag it at least privately until you have a clear answer about what's acceptable. But it's also worth looking at what people are disclosing on Steam, for instance.
For sure. Thank you. Imogen.
Slightly different question. I wanted to ask Jan Lou, because you've worked on so many different branding for games, what was like the most unusual sort of like brand or marketing campaign that you were a part of on all the games that you have released?
Oh, that's a funny question. I use this example all the time, even when I do interviews. It's in my resume. So basically, when we signed Cat Quest, I think they had other offers, and I was told that basically the thing that tipped the scale was the marketing plan I sent to them as a prospective. Here's what we would do. And in that marketing plan, I said, I will find cats and dress them up like the characters of your game. And make videos with real cats, like live action. So we got the pitch. They signed with us, and then they were like, "So where's the cat video?" Then I realized I'd made a horrible mistake. So I did produce actual cat videos. I went to the office on a Saturday morning at 7 a.m. I had asked everyone I knew for their cats, and then I put them in little outfits and we filmed them, and it was actually awful. The videos are somewhere on the PQ Facebook and Twitter, because I released them like a year after launch. But I was just like, it was this crazy idea I had by myself one evening, finishing the marketing deck to send to the devs, and then they wanted it, and we didn't have the expertise to execute it properly. Like we didn't have someone who did storyboards. We just dressed up cats, and then I like cut up a plushie to have paws so I could type on a keyboard and stuff. It was just I really enjoyed it. I don't think it was the most successful marketing campaign, but because they signed with us on Cat Quest and Cat Quest 2, partly because of, I guess, my interactions with them, and they like what I was doing, I will take that as a career win.
I actually did read that on your your LinkedIn, setting up the cats thing, because I've actually played Cat Quest. My brother got it for me for my birthday years ago, and I can understanding what I know of the game, because I finished it like years ago. But like about the humor in the game, from what I understand, and the stuff, the little in jokes in the game, it makes sense that they would have signed you just for that sentence, because some of the stuff that's in the game and stuff. But yeah. So yeah, that sounds amazing. Even if it didn't work out, that sounds.
It was still fun to do. Yes.
Please, can we have that video? I'm looking for it and I can't find it.
I'll send you an email if I can find it. It's been a while, right? It was like 2019, 2017 maybe that I released them. So.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any more questions? Do you think it's time to wrap? Any last questions? No? All right then. Thanks a lot. I think this was such a cool session.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for doing this. Thanks everyone who came. Thanks a lot for your questions. This has been great for everyone.
Great. Thank you very much all for joining and for asking questions at the end. It was great. I guess if anybody had like more burning private questions, as long as I know that you're coming from tech educators, then you can like reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to discuss things more. Or if you want, like, I don't know, I sent my interview questions to Tim and Akshat yesterday, so you have them as well to prep if you have a need. But yeah, if you have any burning other queries, or you want me to review your resume, I'm really strict on it, by the way, so check your spelling, or your pitch deck. I can also do that when you're ready. So yeah, happy to help, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Annalu. Make sure if you're reaching out to Annalu on LinkedIn that you start your message with, "Hey, I'm from a studio and I think we've got a product that'd be really helpful for you. I'm from TechEd and I have a question."
Yes, tell me about your sales tool or your beautiful creative agency. That's my favorite type of message.
Thanks, Annalu.
Cool. Have a good day, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.